everybody, my name is Tanya and this is the New York Times by the book tag. So this tag was created by Marie Berg and I was tagged by the lovely Ellie from the Bibliophile, and I am finally getting around to filming it. I am very behind on all my tags, as you know. This is my most recent tag and I'm determined to actually get it done while people are still actually posting this one. So, that's a novel thought. So the first question is, what book is on your nightstand right now? Usually I have a huge stack of things on my nightstand, although I have purchased some cupboards that I'm hoping to mount above my bed that I can keep that kind of stuff up in, maybe some TBR jars and stuff like that. That hasn't happened quite yet, so the stack of stuff on my bedside table is there. And I've got a number of things that I'm in the middle of at the moment, so currently on my nightstand are A Room of One's Own by Virginia Woolf, The Girl Who Circumnavigated Fairyland in the Ship of Her Own Making by Catherine Valente, a copy of What Is Not Yours Is Not Yours by Helen Oyemi, and Cranky Ladies of History, which I've been reading for quite a long time and haven't picked up and really need to either get to or put aside for now because it's been sitting on my bedside table for a long time. The second question is, what was the last truly great book that you read? And for this I've decided to go with something that I've read recently that's really stuck with me. I'm just thinking better and better things about it as time goes by. I originally gave it 4 stars. I've talked about putting up to 5. Haven't officially done that on Goodreads yet, but I think in my head this is a 5-star read, and that is David Copperfield by Charles Dickens. I just loved everything about this experience of reading this one. I listened to the audio version narrated by Simon Vance. It went for over 30 hours. It was just a pure joy the whole time. I laughed out loud. I commiserated with David because, a lot of this is horrible things that happen to the character of David Copperfield, but I was just swept up in the story. I loved, the majority of the characters. I loved to hate others. It was just the full package, and I think it was truly great. The third question is, if you could meet any author, dead or alive, who would it be, and what would you want to know? My first reaction is, I don't want to meet people, then I have to talk to them. I don't like doing that. But putting aside the introversion, I've kind of tossed up and going a few different ways with this, but I think I'm going to go with Agatha Christie and just say, how? Just how to everything. How was she so prolific? She's, published so many books. How was she able to, not recycle the same stories over and over? I have read, a huge chunk of her work now, and she still has the ability to completely blindside me. I definitely don't have her formula worked out at all. She's just amazing. So basically my question to her would just be, how? The fourth question is, what books might we be surprised to find on your shelves? I think it's fairly well documented that I'm quite an eclectic reader, and that my collection in particular is very strange, whether or not I'm reading a lot of the things that I've got at the moment and what direction my reading has gone in. I have a bit of everything on my shelves, and I read a bit of everything in general. But for something that I picked out, I don't read a lot of chick lit. I probably haven't read any chick lit since starting my channel. I can't think of anything. But it's a nice fluffy comfort read every now and then, and I definitely don't think there's anything wrong with that. And to illustrate that, I've picked out these ones, which are 3 books by Lauren Weisberger. Lauren Weisberger is the author of The Devil Wears Prada, which is the only one of these that I have actually read, but I also have 2 others of hers, Everyone Worth Knowing and Chasing Harry Winston. At the moment, looking at these, I don't have any real compulsion to pick up the other 2 or ever reread The Devil Wears Prada. I think I'll just watch the movie. So there's something on my shelves that I don't think fits what I'm reading at the moment. But that being said, it's sitting there if I am ever in the mood. But maybe one of the more surprising elements of my collection, I guess. The fifth question is, how do you organise your personal library? And in a lot of respects, I don't. So there are certain areas of my collection that are, semi-organised, and the rest of it's just a hodgepodge of weirdness. So I've got a number of different bookshelves. I've got 5 bookshelves in my front passage, which I'm looking at over there. That's why I'm kind of staring off camera. And that one starts with my Agatha Christie collection, which is shelved in a specific order, and that is chronologically. So I've spoken about many times on my channel, I'm doing a chronological read through of Agatha Christie's works, and I'll leave a link to a video I did about that down in the description. And so on the shelves, they're set out in that chronological publishing order, I'm kind of working my way along the shelving. I have collected a lot of books designed by Carly Bickford Smith, published by Penguin, so I've got her collections kind of grouped together on that bookshelf as well, and they're in author and then title order within those. So I've got a number of collections, unless they're numbered, then they're within the numbering system they've been published with, but in general they're in author order. In general, I keep my authors together, but that's not true always, and in general I keep my collections together. So Now I've kind of reorganised things out there. I've got my vintage red spines together, my black penguin classics together, my modern classics together, so that they're sitting in collection chunks, but that hasn't always been the case either. And series in particular I like to keep together because, you know, that's good. Also, it helps me remember which order things go in sometimes. So that's kind of out there. This bookshelf behind me is just a completely random selection of things that were still in boxes and have been moved here, and also quite a lot of my new purchases are going on these shelves because this is the one that has a little bit of space. And then I've got 4 bookshelves in a spare room here, which has, in general, non-fiction. It's got the less attractive books, I guess. A lot of the more secondhand and things that I'm not quite so interested in are on that shelf. Then it also has my young adult books and my children's books in there. So that's general organisation, but again, what's actually on the shelves and the order that they're in is just a mash of those. The 6th question is, what book have you always meant to read and never got around to? And are there any books you're embarrassed to have not read? I said this before, it's probably quite a standard answer, but it is really what I feel. I think I've done a pretty good job at starting to read some of the books that I've been really meaning to read for a long time, so quite a few of those have been checked off, but one I still haven't dared to attempt yet is Moby Dick by Herman Melville. I would really like to read this one, you know, to experience Moby Dick. You hear so much about this one, both positive and negative, and I'd like to see where I fall on the scale of that. And you know, it's just one of those big epic books that for some reason we all think we should read. There must be some reason for that, so I'd like to find out. And in general, I'm not embarrassed about not having read things. I might shake my head and go, how have I not done that? Like, really? But for this, I've kind of gone with a general sense of one of my favourite authors, why have I not read more by them? And so the book that I've chosen to represent that is The Silmarillion by J.R.R. Tolkien. I, at a pinch, if you force me, would call J.R.R. Tolkien my favourite author. I would call Lord of the Rings my favourite book. It's a very hard choice to make, but I think he's really up there. I absolutely adore his work. But I've only read a very small selection. Now, in general, I've read the books that were, you know, his big books, but there are a lot of other ones. There's a lot of detailed mythology that he's put into creating his worlds, and then there are other works that have been published posthumously that I have not read. I've read The Hobbit and The Lord of the Rings multiple times, and I fairly recently read Rover Random, which I got for Christmas a couple of years ago. But I own a handful of other books by Tolkien that I have not read, and why have I not read this? He is my favourite. Just, what's wrong with you, Tanya? The 7th question is disappointing, overrated, just not good. What book did you feel you should enjoy but didn't? And do you remember the last book you put down without finishing it? For a book that I've read this year that I felt I would like a lot more, and I feel like I should like a lot more, and felt, you know, it felt wrong giving it a lower rating, was A Tale of Two Cities by Charles Dickens. This one is, you know, largely acknowledged to be his masterpiece, and I just didn't connect with it really at all, which was a big surprise to me and a really big shame. So I find it very ironic that I've chosen a Dickens as my last truly great book, and also Dickens as the book that I didn't enjoy as much as I thought I would do. And so, you know, just shows that an author, you know, has complete breadth, and maybe at a different time I would enjoy this. But in general, this lacked everything that David Copperfield had. It, you know, David Copperfield was compelling, it had wonderful characters to hang on to, I loved it all. This one, in comparison, is very dry. It's a very political book, so there's that, but I didn't connect with any of the characters in this one. I didn't feel any impact and connection to the storyline in a lot of respects, and so it ended up being a bit of a disappointment. And I've very recently given myself permission to DNF a couple of things just to get them, you know, off my bedside table and to stop staring at me and go, no, it's okay, you can put that aside and come back to later. So the last one of those is The Dead Avocado by Elaine Dundee, which I have very recently decided to call officially a DNF for now. I have every intention of going back and trying this again, but I just didn't connect with it when I started. I made a very slow start on this. I was actually meant to be reading this as a buddy read with a group of others, and I know that there were, you know, others that were struggling with this too, and more than one of us who DNF'd this in the end. So I felt like I wanted to read this and to read this with the group, but I just wasn't picking it up. And so I read the first chapter and then put it down for ages, and then I read a little bit more and didn't pick it up for a month. And I went, just get it off my shelf now. So I think I could enjoy this in the future, like at another time, but at the moment I didn't care. So I DNF'd this one very recently. Question number 8 is, what kinds of stories are you drawn to, and are there any you stay clear of? In general, I read a lot of different things, which I've, spoken about before, and is no doubt evident with the kinds of books I read. So I'm drawn to a lot of very different things, but in general, I think the books that I'm most drawn to are kind of big epics, immersive worlds, just, great characters, something that you can get completely immersed in, something like Lord of the Rings, just a totally epic story. I just love throwing myself into that world. Harry Potter's another one, of course, but so that does lend itself very well to big fantasy epics, but not even that. Like, it could be any kind of story that's just rich and detailed and just immersive and sucks you in. That kind of experience I enjoy a lot. In terms of something I avoid, I'm not a big reader of romance. I don't mind romance when it's kind of amongst other things and it's not the major focus, or there's a lot more going on than just a straight romance novel. But yeah, I don't really seek out romance as a genre. The ninth question is, if you could require the president to read one book, what would it be? Interchange this with president, prime minister, but just generally anybody I think should read this, and I've chosen The Raft, Fundamentalist by Mohsen Hamid. This is a book that details a Middle Eastern man living in the US and what happens in the aftermath of 9/11 and the way he is treated in the aftermath of 9/11 and the effect that ends up having on him. And I guess the lesson that I want people to take from it is, that if we just treated each other as people, as humans, the humans that we are, instead of, portraying a racial or religious stereotype on that person, how much different it could be. So I think this is a very important story, and a very important thing to think about when it comes to the way we treat others. And I would highly recommend it to everybody, but it's my choice for this question. And the last question, the 10th question, is what do you plan to read next? I have just posted a TBR video for the Mental Health Awareness Readathon that's taking place in this next week, although when this video will go up is questionable, so it might have happened already, but they're the books that I am wanting to read next. So that is the New York Times by the book tag. This one has been going around like crazy on BookTube, so I don't know who has done it and who hasn't anymore, but if you haven't done it and you would like to do it, then I definitely tag you and let me know it in the comments. As always, thank you all for watching, and I will see you next time. Bye. I am surrounded by books right now.